Hi everyone, welcome to a poker vlog with a bit of a difference. Poker with kids.
Fuck it, let's go. Don't tease me. Let's play some fucking cards.
Hi everybody, welcome to vlog 21. 20 and it's official, we're on the Gold Coast. Made the trip up from Melbourne, but before we get to that, thought I'd run through some poker that I've actually played lately. I've actually had quite a few sessions since leaving Melbourne, and in fact even had one in Melbourne before I left. So to start off with, something that ordinarily I wouldn't be able to play in, the APL monthly state championships. It actually won an event from a previous year. You can see Dorset Gardens in early December. That qualified me for the January state final. Ordinarily I wouldn't be able to compete in that because I'd be TDing, and the standard rule is TDs can't compete in the state championships. But as I was moving to Queensland, the guy in charge of APL Victoria said, okay, well, you're not working for us, and it was literally the day before I left Victoria. So he said, sure, you can go ahead and play in that event if you want. So I took the opportunity, made the trip out to Melton Tabcorp Park for the state championship. This time they attracted 400, I think it's 455, just over 450 runners, and my day was a pretty quick one. It's an interesting structure to start with. You start with a 10k start stack with blinds at 25.50, but everybody gets a rebuy slash add-on, which is 25k. So if you lose your initial 10k, you then get an extra 25k, or obviously you can use that 25k as an add-on at the break if you haven't already used it. So the strange bit is, if you actually bust your first starting stack, you actually end up effectively being the chip leader in most cases, because everybody else is sitting with a 10k stack. They might be slightly above or slightly below 10k. Even if you happen to double somebody up and they end up with 20, you're coming back in with 25. So all of a sudden you go from being the table, oops, I lost, to all of a sudden you're now the big stack of the table. So a bit of a weird dynamic with that kind of thing. Anyway, let's have a look at some of the hands from that state championship. Okay, so the first hand is from the 100-200 level. I'm sitting on the button, and the cutoff lips in front of me. I look down at A6 suited, decide to raise it up to 575, and as it seems pretty standard with these APL games, everybody else was in the hand called. So the small blind called, the big blind called, and the cutoff hood limp also called as well. So 4 ways to a flop, which came out ace, ace, 9 with 2 hearts. I decided to check to me. I c-bet for 2,000, and only the big blind called. The turn was an offsuit jack. Again, big blind checked to me. I had 5k behind. I went all in for the 5k. The big blind called. I turned over my cards, and he's like, "What are you doing? There's still one more card to come." Like, but I'm all in. Of course, this guy had already used his rebuy already. He's like, "Oh, I didn't realise." And so he turned over his cards, and he had 8-2 of hearts. So just a naked flush draw, and of course the 10 of hearts comes on the river, and he wins the hand. I've lost my first buy-in, and I'm off to get my 25k rebuy. Okay, hopefully we'll try and improve the audio a little bit, a bit less waves and the odd bird. Now we've moved back from the beach for the next little bit. So the next hand is at the 300-600 level. The undergun player decides to raise to 3,000. I look down at Queen 10 of diamonds in the cutoff and decide to make the call. Everyone else folds, and we see a flop of 7, 8, 9 with 2 hearts, 1 diamond. And the undergun player who raised, she leads out for 10,000, leaving herself with about 8,000 behind. I've already, as I said, chipped up to around 25,000 by this stage, so I've got it covered. I figure with the open-ended straight draw, the overcards, I think I'm up against, in terms of her hand range, I think she's played it like she's got a big pair, so I've got a fair few outs against that kind of range. Obviously the Jack or a 6 to make it straight. One pair is probably not good, but there's a chance I could go run around and make 2 pairs. There's also the backdoor flush draw. So there are some ways I can win the hand, although I realise I'm probably getting in behind, so I decide to shove. And she calls, and she does turn over aces. So not in the greatest of shape, but not horrible. And the turn helps out a little bit. It's an offsuit 10. So obviously now I've got a pair of 10s to go with the straight draw. Although having said that, now a 6 would only chop rather than winning the pot outright. But again, any 10, any jack, any queen is going to win it for us. But of course, that doesn't come on the river, and we brick out, lose that pot. And just to show that it wasn't a complete fail for the afternoon or the morning, this next hand, in the cutoff, and decided to raise 300, 600 level again. Decided to raise Jack 10 suited to 2,000. The small blind decides to call, and we see a flop of 10, 9, 9 rainbow. Checks to me. I decide to bet 2,000, and he calls. The turn is an 8. This time I bet 2,500, and again he calls, and the river is a 4. And once again he checks to me. This time again I decide I gets the value. He hasn't really played it like he has a 9, so I decide to bet 3,000, and again he calls. I show my Jack 10. He rolls up to 10-6 offsuit, and the Jack plays. So I get pretty close to max value, I think, for that hand. So it's not like I just went in and lost all my chips with nothing. And the final significant hand from the state championships, what was my bust out hand? This is one that I'm not sure that the result would have actually been any different, but I did definitely misplay the hand as it was. Anyway, I'm under the gun, look down at 2 red 4s, and decide to just limp in. That starts the limping train that we have in these poker events, and almost everybody comes along to see the flop. We actually go 7 ways to the flop, which is 6-5-4 with 2 spades. So a flop bottom set. Checks to me, and I lead out for 1,400. The player to my direct left decides to raise to 3,000. There's a call from middle position, and there's a call from the big blind. And this is where I butchered things. The person who was dealing burnt the card and was about to show the turn. Everyone's going, oh, hold on. And I probably should have, I think I had about 18, 19 grand total, and I think I probably should have just shoved on the flop. Instead of doing that, I did the stupid play and decided to call, and ideally hoping for a safe turn. So any kind of non-spade, preferably something above a 10 would be nice. So after the mistake on the flop, I completely butchered things on the turn. Anyway, the turn is an offsuit 2. So now it's obviously one card to straight with a 3, and the big blind leads out for 6,000. I think this stage with obviously 2 players behind me, I think I should just let the hand go. But genius me decided that, oh well, I've got if the board pairs, surely I'm good. So I call the 6K. The under the gun +1 player behind me decided to shove for around 23K or something like that, but had me covered. Middle position player folds, and the big blind reshoved. Also had me covered, I think he had about 35K. Given the size of the pot from the pre-flop, flop and flop betting, combined with the fact that I'm getting literally 2 to 1 just on the turn, I figured I might as well do the go hard or go home theory. I was either going to triple up with change or be doing the walk of shame, and so I decided to make the call for my remaining about 11 or 12,000 that I had after obviously the 6,000 that I put in already. And then the players turned over their hands. Interesting to see what everybody actually had. The big blind had a 9-3 offsuit, obviously with the straight with a 3, and the under the gun +1 player had 6-5 of diamonds. So wasn't quite in as good a shape as I was hoping, and I basically down 4 outs. The last 4 or another 2. So when the board did actually pair on the river, it was actually the 6. That meant that the under the gun +1 player actually made a bigger full house with 6-5. So that was it for me. Done and dusted for the state championships. Didn't quite make the first break. I think it was only a couple of minutes before the break, but still didn't quite make the first break. So not the greatest way to finish up the poker in Victoria, but that's in the past. So thanks for the obviously glad to have the opportunity to play in the state championships, but would have liked to have both played and run a little bit better. But as with a lot of poker tournaments, sometimes it's just not your day. So that was Melbourne. Started the drive up to Queensland on Monday, made it to my parents' place on Monday night, stayed there and for a few nights, and actually kept going up to Queensland on Friday morning. So while I was in Sydney, Tuesday night and Wednesday night, caught up with a few of my friends from Sydney, and made a few trips into the Star Poker Room there. Before we get to how the actual sessions went, just a few comments on the Star Poker Room. A couple of things that I've noticed. Some things good, some things not so good. Big improvements with the room. They've changed their rake / time structure, and they've actually got rid of the time charge, the annoying $5 every hour, which and it wasn't just a $5 an hour, it's $5 plus rake on top of that. So anybody in America is watching that, watching this, if you ever worry about rake in America, just come to Australia, and it's a whole other world in live casinos. So anyway, the start of change there, at least on the lower limit tables. I was playing 2-3. Which is actually the smallest game they've got now. They've got rid of the 1-2 games, so it's a $100 to $500 buy-in on the 2-3 game, which is kind of an interesting kind of spectrum. You're looking at what 30 or so blinds, all the way up to 160 with 500. So there's a pretty big range of buy-in that you can have in terms of short stacking or deep stacking it from the get-go. So the rake structure, they've got 10% capped at $10, except if the pot is over 150, in which case they take 15. A bit unusual that they did that rather than just doing, look, it's 10% up to 15, but they've gone, look, we'll cap it at $10 unless it's a big pot, in which case we take 15. Again, you've got the weird case where instead of having a drop box to put the rake, they put the rake in the float, so you can literally see if you want to take sort of, if you want to notice what they're taking, you can sort of sit down and take a little mental note of what the float, what the chips in front of the dealer look like when you first sit down, and then have a look at them when you leave and realise that, hey, there's actually quite a bit that comes off the table, which obviously isn't that great for the players, but generally speaking, there's a lot that goes on the table as well. So that's a bit of good news in terms of, like I said, getting rid of the time charge. They've also instituted a raw flush jackpot similar to what they have at Crown. I suppose it's good because then you get the there's some incentive for the random people who might not be poker players to go, oh look, I can win 20,000 plus if I get lucky. Almost like a jackpot on Caribbean Stud or any of the poker games against the house that they have there. And obviously if you win the jackpot, it's good for you, but again, I think they've added that will take the 15 on the big pots to cover the extra rate they bring in for the jackpot. So some good, some bad with that. Layout of the room seems nice enough, but two things that are horrible. In terms of the system of getting seating tickets and registering for games and that type of thing, that's something that really needs to be improved. They use the kind of standard system that they do here in Australia and a lot of places around the world, where you basically either swipe your card with your details or give them a phone number, they put you on the list, and obviously as players get called, you get a text message that says, hey, your seat's available, or your name flashes on the list and you come up and get your ticket. The big problem is that this booth that does it has, for the most part, one person doing things. When I got there, one night it was actually pretty quiet to register, but the following night there was probably about 10 people in line when I registered, and it doesn't seem to be a particularly quick process. You're thinking, look, I'll just swipe the card, done, you're on the list, but apparently it's not the sort of 10 or 15 second process that it probably should be. So while I was waiting, the things built up, and yeah, so the line behind me got huge as well. So yeah, not the most efficient system at all. And to make matters worse, the same person that is doing the registrations is also the one handing out the tickets when people get their text messages and the like. So as happened with when I was there was a new table that opened, so you got 9 people that wanted to have a seat. They all joined a second kind of line, and the guys got to shuffle between registering people and putting them on the list to giving people the tickets. For some reason, the simple system of saying your name and what game you're on and that you're being called wasn't quite so simple for the guy behind the desk, and his lament was, oh, the screen that you see isn't the screen that I see. So when someone goes, oh, it's Adam for the 2-3, it's not just a case of click a button, print a ticket. It's somehow more involved, and again, it takes a lot more time. So that's one thing that really needs to be improved. The staff, okay, without being fantastic. They did their job for the most part. Most of it was fine. Deals are okay. There's always the bit with Sydney where you've got them dealing out of the shoe, so they do the little pull the card out of the shoe and slide it across the table to all the players, which is a bit, I mean, it's still, you still get your cards, but it looks inefficient, but maybe it isn't. people don't seem to have too much of a problem with it, but it just looks odd. But one thing that I did hear from one of my mates who goes there is what they do at 6 o'clock in the morning. Basically, they close all the tables that are still up and running, except for one table which becomes a 2-3 table or whatever the lowest limit is, and you basically have to pick a ticket or pick a card to see if you're one of the players who gets on the table. If you're not on the table, you either go home or join the list. And so it just seems stupid that presumably they've got more than one table worth of players and they still decide to shut everything down and just go back to one table. But again, that's something that's a management decision from Star's perspective. So if it works for them, it works for them. I suppose it's a way of effectively closing the room at 6 o'clock and trying to get people out of the poker room. But I guess they've got to do what they've got to do. In terms of hands, not a lot to report from the first session. I'll just quickly run through two. First one, I'm in the hijack, look down at ace-7 of diamonds, decide to raise to 15, get called by the cutoff and both the blinds. Flop comes down, ace-8-6 rainbow. I decide to c-bet for $20 and only the cutoff calls. The turn pairs the ace, pretty good card for my hand. Again, I decided to bet 30. I bet 30. Again, the cutoff calls, and the river was an offsuit 3. So no straights really completed. I've got trip aces, so I decided to bet 60, and the cutoff folds. And the second hand really isn't that interesting at all, but it's more of a jackpot related story. Again, I look down in middle position, I've got ace-jack offsuit, ace of spades, jack of diamonds, raise up to 15, get called by the button, and we see a flop, which is king of spades, queen of spades, 10 of spades. So I flop a straight with the raw flush redraw, and I guess things I don't actually have the flush, but I've got a straight, maybe I can get some value. I think it's one of those ones where if I let, if the guy's got anything, I don't know, king, queen, he's probably going to peel. If he doesn't, I'm not going to get anything. Anyway, I decided to bet 15. He folds, and I do the semi-slow roll, turn over the ace of spades. The rest of the table's kind of ooh, and then I just turn over the jack of diamonds, and disappointment all around. But obviously, not having suited cards, you can't actually win the jackpot in the first place. But yeah, would have been nice to somehow score. The jackpot was around 25,000 when I was there, so it would have been nice to score the 25k. But I think that's probably the closest I'll come to Sydney jackpot for quite a while. But anyway, finish up the session, a small profit, only there for a couple of hours. I think it was about $40-50 ahead, so slightly ahead, but nothing particularly significant from the session. And the second night at the Star, again, not too much to really talk about. A lot of hands. I had the pocket pair, where not a big pocket pair, but something kind of the eights are under, where you'll sort of call a raise to see a flop, miss the flop, and basically check fold, or you'd end up with a potential jackpot hand that queen 10 suited, jack 10 suited, king queen suited, something like that. And often those are the kind of hands where it was sort of multi-way, but you get one or two players with big hands, either big pairs or ace king, that type of stuff. So there was a couple of hands where it sort of went raise to 15, I'll call with my jack 10 suited, and then folds around to the button, who raises to 45, and then the guy who was the initial raiser then makes it 120 or something, and I'm just not going to put in 120 pre-flop with a hand like jack 10 or queen 10 or something like that. So there are a few hands like that, a few, as I said, smaller medium pairs that missed, so that didn't help the cause. But then two hands where things didn't work out too well. First one, we've lived 5 ways. I'm in the big blind with Queen 6 offsuit. The flop comes down Queen 8-4. I decide to lead for 10, get called by the button. Turn was a 9. I decide to check. He bets small again. He bets 10. I call. The river's a 2. Again, I check it over to him. He bets relatively small again. He bets 17. I decided to call and get shown Queen Jack. So obviously my 6 kick is no good, and I lose that one. And the final hand I want to have a look at from the session at the Star. This time in the small blind with Jack 10 offsuit. We've got 4 or 5 limpers in front of me, so I throw in the extra $1 to call the big blind. Big blind checks, and we're off to a flop, which is Queen Jack 7. Checks around. I decide to check again on a 10 on the turn. So even though I make 2 pair, I check it. The button bets 15. I pretty obviously call with 2 pair. Everyone else gets out of the way, and the river is an offsuit 3. Pretty innocuous card again. I check it over to the button, who decides to bet 22. Don't think I'm really going to do anything else except call, and I get shown 8-9 offsuit. So he's turned straight with the 10 that gave me the 2 pair. So yeah, just one of those sessions. I think it ended up around 100 down over the session. So across the course of the 2 sessions, slightly down, but not by too much. But yeah, good to play a bit of poker, get into the Star Poker Room. As I said, there's some things that are improved, some things that still need some work, but it's definitely better than it was, or has been in the past anyway. Anyway, that's going to wrap up vlog number 21, the first one from Queensland and the Gold Coast. If you're up here and see me at a poker event, feel free to say hi. Interestingly, one of the players at the Star in Sydney actually said, oh, he's still doing the vlogs. Clearly he hadn't been checking his YouTube channel or hadn't subscribed. Maybe you should. But yeah, I've been putting out probably a bit more content than I have been of late, but we'll see how we go. So again, feel free to subscribe to the channel and like the video if you do, but hopefully get some more content up soon. I've already got another poker tournament that I've already played in, and I'll get to that in the next vlog, but hopefully we'll have plenty more poker content coming to you from Queensland.